Hi, I'm Adam and this is the Uplink port. In today's video we're going to be swapping out our other lightweight Mikrotik BNG for a slightly heavier Cisco BNG, all for a not so light server. And this thing scares me not only because of the weight but also because of how filthy this thing is from where it's been stored. Not here, where it was previously. So if you're into retro networking gear or just curious on how things work, stick around. Right, so I need to apologise in advance. Before we do anything, there is a large amount of building work going on across the road. It is also extremely wet and windy outside, and this is not a professional studio with a load of soundproofing. So we'll see how this goes. Now, you may be asking yourself, why am I swapping out the Mikrotik with a Cisco to act as the BNG? And the reason is this. Well, not necessarily this. This is literally just a server and a really old case. It's more down to what's on this disk and also what's onto the memory stick. And you may recall when I covered this last time, I dropped it. It's back together. Now, there's a lot to go over in all of this as to the history and everything. This is not a deep dive video as to the company that developed all of this and all of the history that goes along with it. While we will touch on a fair amount of it, it could probably do with its own video at some point in the future anyway. But at the minute, we are just going to mess around with it from a technical perspective. So this is, or this I should say, is what's referred to as the BondedCD. Now, back in the early 2000s, obviously ADSL was first released in the UK. On the 31st of March 2006, OpenReach, or BT at the time, released their ADSL Max product. And what that basically meant was, instead of having limited half meg, 1 meg and 2 meg ADSL profiles with 256 kilobits per second of upstream, they were basically rate adaptive all the way up to 8 meg on the downstream, and on residential 448 kilobits per second on the upstream and 832 on the upstream for business connections. Now, obviously the demand for bandwidth has always been increasing, and at the time it wasn't particularly cheap, or there weren't particularly many options to increase your overall bandwidth. You had things like Ethernet leased lines, but at the time they were extremely expensive. You're talking sort of £800–900 a month for relatively sort of low throughput circuits like 10 megabits per second. You had the equivalent of T1 or E1 lines, which were typically delivered from BT over an ISDN 30 with all channels connected and was configured for data to allow for 2 meg up and 2 meg down. Again, that was relatively quite expensive in the day. The alternative was bonding, or MLPPP, so multilink point-to-point protocol. Now, back in that era, there wasn't many people specializing in it, and Upstream Internet were a company that came into the market in 2006 offering ADSL with their own BT Central, and also giving you the ability to actually bond with a relatively easy product, which they nicknamed the BondedCD. The entire operating system, or Linux platform, runs off of a CD. The memory key stores various configuration files for it and other bits and bobs, and then there's a hard disk inside this, which I think was purely for logging. I can't remember exactly what it was for, but put it all together, you had a platform where you could buy a broadband connection from them, or multiple broadband connections from them. They would obviously do all the complex MLPPP side their end, and then obviously they'd give you the CD that you could run on your own hardware to configure MLPPP from your end, and it was relatively quite seamless other than putting your details in on the memory stick and into the config files. So they were giving you effectively an all-in-one solution. Now, the CD itself was free if you bought hardware from them, and they were Pacific Sangoma cards, which this does still have in it, or you were buying broadband connectivity from them at the time. If not, you actually had to purchase a license key with all of it. Now, that may or may not be a stumbling block for all of this, because I'm fairly sure this memory stick has succumbed to bit rot on it. We will find out when we plug it in, but it has been almost 18 years since that was last connected, and it has seen better days, put it that way. So whether we can recover the files to even get started on this, I don't know. But the first protocol for all of this is we need to swap out the BNG. So the Mikrotik, while it supports client-side MLPPP, does not support server-side MLPPP. And for that, we need something that's capable of doing it. And the Cisco, in this case, the 1921 has got the ability to create virtual MLPPP bundles in order to actually bring up the multi-link point-to-point protocol and hopefully combine all of those channels together. So we need to swap that out. So that's the first thing we are going to do. We're also going to need to test this to make sure it's just terminating normal PPP sessions, and for that we're going to use our trusty BT Home Hub that's still sat up and configured in the corner. So we'll get this configured with a very basic config, make sure it's online and working, and then we will look at configuring it for MLPPP. Now, if we run into issues with this out of reach, which I should have thought about, I have, oh god, I should have planned for this better, a 1841 along with 2 ADSL WIC cards to go in it, and this obviously will do client-side MLPPP without too much issue, and planning really didn't account for this. I go there. I fully expect there to be issues with this. I fully expect this not to be working in this video, and there are a couple of reasons for that, as I've mentioned. Number one, the files on this are going to be dead, so I'm going to have to try and find the files for this somewhere. Now, a wonderful gentleman called Ellis in the Discord forum has files for it, so I need to try and get them off of him. He seems to have a multitude of everything. He's literally the Aladdin's cave of software and files, so I'm going to reach out to him if I get stuck with that. But also, before we go any further with that, we actually need to see if we can get this running. Now, this came from a previous customer that I did some work for probably about 18 years ago in a previous company. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video, they reached out to me beginning of the year and said, did I want this back? And at the time I said, no, I had no need for it. Obviously, everything's now changed, and I thought it'd be really cool to do a video on this and part of its history. So I reached back out to them a couple of months ago and said, do you still have it? And they said, Adam, of course we do. We're a storage company. We don't get rid of anything. So again, a couple of months ago, I ran down and picked this up. Now, I have had this open purely because the state of this on the outside warranted me looking into it to see whether we could actually do anything with it to start with. Unfortunately, there is a ton of rust on the back of the case, and that does seem to have encroached internally, and there does seem to be an awful lot of surface rust on the main board. So I'm extremely skeptical about powering this on and damaging anything. I will take the lid off of it and we will have a look at it. Now, the BondedCD had hardware specifications or particular boards it was compatible with. I will see if I can find that particular list on archive.org. Now, I can't remember exactly what the compatibility list was for. I believe it was down to simply the drivers that this had built into it on the CD for the hardware that you were obviously running with it, maybe network drivers, chipset drivers, all of that good stuff. I can't honestly remember. Now, I have spare boards and everything upstairs. As to whether they will work with this, I don't know. So this may be sort of a quick quick video into this and actually seeing what it is about while we get MLPPP and bonding working on stuff I know should work. However, I'm diving into this head first because I've never, or into the deep end, because I've never configured MLPPP on both sides, as I've said. So we need to get it working first. Then once we know we've got a sensible and working platform, then we'll try and get this working. But then we need to overcome all the hurdles that go with that as well. I've said software, files and hardware. So we may end up rebuilding this, and this deserves a video in itself really. Upstream Internet is a company that, I have to be careful what I say, but I will throw the news article up from ISP review at the time, but had a bit of an interesting end to it all, and I'm very much aware of it because we got caught up in it at the time because we were using Upstream Internet for all of their bonding platform and all of the software and everything else that was running with it. However, something interesting has also come out of that as well, in that I now actually have the upstreaminter.net domain that is now in my control. It was for sale before I started all of this, so I have purchased that to go with it as well. So should we come into any licensing issues with regards to sort of the domain and how all this works, we now actually have the, not that it really mattered anyway, because we could have replicated the domain on the radius thinking about it, but we have the domain for sort of the complete picture with all of it. So anyway, I am rambling. We need to get the software or config even onto the Cisco. I need to see if it's wiped or anything like that, and then actually build that out, and then we need to get that tested. So I shall see you as usual in front of my screen, and hopefully in a terminal session connected to the Cisco. Thinking about it, I need to go and find console cables and all of that larky, and it's been a while since I had one of those. Right, see you in a bit. The Cisco is online and booted and lacking power cable to give me any links to show you anything, but yeah, it's booted. It looks like it's been in the wars at some point in the past because it's covered in white paint, so either from a wall or a decorator. But on the rear of the device, power cable and console cable, nothing special apart from the console cable hanging into dear life because the little pin on the RJ45 cable is broken and keeps coming out, and I'm too lazy to replace it, nor do I have a spare one because all the rest are in the office, and yeah, it is what it is. So if I lose console access, then it'll actually be my own doing rather than anything I've actually done wrong, which will be a change before anyone says anything. Now, swapping over screens to what you can see, which is what I forgot to do initially, and I'm re-recording that section because I didn't save it either. I'm rambling. Right, during all of that, Cisco is booted, and I'm really tempted to hit yes on the initial configuration dialog box just to wind up a load of people in Discord, but I'm not going to. The config I have pre-typed and pre-done just so make this life a lot easier, but I can also run through it really quickly rather than spending literally time putting it in on console. It's here. So we're configuring the host name and domain name. The reason for that is because I want to configure or set up or generate an RSA certificate because I want SSH access into this later on. We're configuring AAA, so authentication, authorization and accounting. They're all the radius groups that are set up. The radius server itself is there. Now this mimics all the details that were in the Mikrotik, so hopefully this should just be a straight swap or drop-in replacement, fingers crossed, and should just work. Now we are configuring a secret user and obviously a normal login for all of this. These passwords will be hashed once the Cisco reboots. It's just for the initial time putting them in, you put them in plain text. We've got gigabit interface 00, which is the uplink from the lab to my network, and then we've got 01, which is the uplink to the DSLAM. The only difference on this on the Cisco is that you don't define an IP address here like we did on the Mikrotik. The virtual template actually borrows an IP address from 00, so we'll get to that as we go down. We've got PPPoE enabled, and we've got the uplink group port. That is a BBA group, which is broadband access aggregation. That ties into virtual group 1. Virtual group 1 has the MTU set. It also has the interface this is going to be using and going out on, and obviously we set PPP authentication and then PAP chat and all that good stuff. We have a static route from the Cisco itself because we're not running BGP, OSPF or any routing protocols on this yet. We've got a static route out on all of this. We're obviously configuring the RSA key. We've got an access list in place for the lab and LAN network. We've got VTY04. We're configuring the access list and we're setting SSH as the transport type. And just for laughs, I used an ASCII key generation website to do the uplink port. There was a few that came out. This was probably the only one that came out okay. I have no idea how it's going to look like when it actually goes in on the Cisco, so we'll see what the message of the day prompt looks like once we've saved all of this and logged out, and yeah, see if that was a bad decision or not. So let's bring up the Cisco. Let's say no to this, and thinking about it, I probably should have done that earlier because it's going to take sort of 10-15 seconds to move on from that. I'm going to dump most of this in one go, so it is just in. So I'm going to copy everything up to the RSA key generation, and we are going to jump into enable, configure terminal. I'm going to pop all of this in and hopefully it just goes in without any aggro, which it does appear to have done. Now we're going to generate the RSA key, and for speed I'm just going to configure 1024. I'm going to put the access list in, which has, sorry I missed that because the console updated to tell me SSH had been enabled. going to set stuff for VTY, the access, yeah, that's what's going in, and then we're going to put the banner in. Now I realise I probably could have done that last section in one go, but I just wanted to make sure it actually went in without any aggro because I haven't tested any of this. So that is all in and should be everything that we need. Let's write the, oh, no, let's jump out of config and then write the config. And let's log out and let's see what the banner looks like. Hey, that's not too bad actually. It could be better. I probably will do a different one. I just need to find one that works. There were a few others, but I was sort of running into scaling issues with the size of the text because obviously it's quite a long name to be going in for this, and some ASCII versions ended up running off the screen or just looked horrendous. Now let's actually see if this lets me log in. Now I've used root rather than anything else just because I'm trying to keep all the username and passwords the same, because during the week I lost access to the ESXi host here locally because I had one of those moments and I could not remember what the password was, and no amount of me thinking and trying and coming back to it would enable me to actually remember what it was. So in the end I ended up having to reinstall ESXi. So I'm keeping everything simple, and yes, I could use a password manager for all of this on here. Am I going to? No, I have enough of a password manager at work and at home, and this is the lab environment. Right, what was I doing? Logging in. Right, that's worked. And cool. The only thing left at this moment in time is to drop in the Cisco into the cabinet and yeah, fully replace the router board. Now, the issue I'm going to run into next is the fact that the router board is smaller than the Cisco. So what I mean by that is, I should have planned this better, is obviously the router board is quite small in terms of depth, and the Cisco, which I showed in the intro, is quite a bit bigger in terms of depth, and that poses a problem because the fan that's mounted in the cabinet sits down by about a U, and that fitted in perfectly. In fact, actually it's in the U that's not supposed to be usable space, so that's going to have to sit on top of the cabinet for the time being, which probably isn't a bad thing until we actually make sure it's definitely working, and then I need to reorganize that cabinet or get a bigger cabinet. Space in here is really constrained, and it's only going to get worse when the next delivery from Zen turns up, which I plan to do something on when that turns up, maybe a little short, because that is an awful lot of equipment, and it has grown since the last video as well, and things have been changed, and I'm really excited for it, but I have no idea how I'm going to fit any of that in here. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. I'm going to go and set you up, and we're going to basically put this in, connect it all, get everything fired up. I also have a camera that's sitting on top of the BT Home Hub now, so we can actually go through and do various things like that. So should make this a lot easier and a lot nicer to work with. Right, I will see you in the cabinet. Right, so this is literally taking me 5 minutes to set up for something that's probably only going to take 2 seconds, but it is getting me in the habit of making sure I'm checking things as we go around and do things like volume levels on sort of a mic receiver and so forth, because that has been a problem in previous videos where I've not been paying attention. And hopefully, by the time this comes out as well, power is going to be interesting because I don't have power. And spoiler, the Mikrotik that I've been saying I'm going to be replacing, which is this one, isn't actually the one that's in here. It's literally just been that this has been out of the box. We were going to be using this as our LNS at some point to replicate how you would resell broadband through a chain of providers effectively. We've not got round to it, and I was just too lazy to take that out the cabinet. So it is actually on. The DSLAM isn't at the minute, although the DSLAM noise is really quiet these days with those new fans in there, and hasn't been a problem as I thought it was going to be in respects to sort of the environmental management. It's actually been relatively quite warm, and the other day when it was freezing in here during the night and I had this on, it still didn't cause any issues, so fingers crossed that doesn't in the future. So in terms of power, I've got one from the desk. Let's plug you into there, and this hopefully at some point will go in there. Now I said it was in the unusable space, but it's not. It's actually in 12U, which is actually usable space. In fact, looking it will fit in there. The problem it's then going to generate is the fact that the gap between the fan and the Cisco is going to be absolutely tiny, so I imagine it's going to restrict airflow. Right, link to the network needs to be in 00, and the link to the DSLAM needs to be in 01. And I'm pleased to say that this has been tested, passed and reset, and it's running IP base. It's not a sticker that I put on it either. It's also quite washed out. There we go. Right, there's nothing really more to see here. I need to turn the DSLAM on, obviously, because we need to make sure the hub boots and connects and all that good stuff. The ESXi host here is online, so let's turn the DSLAM on quickly. I don't think how noisy this is going to be while it boots, but I can always just do this. No, I can't because the camera's in the way. And for this through at all, there we go. Alright, let's go back up to the desk, onto the PC, and change webcams and hopefully see the BT Home Hub Connect, assuming all the config on this is done properly. And yeah, we can then move on to phase 2, which is setting up MLPPP. I apologise if it's a bit darker around here. I had to steal a studio light to go over there to light up the hub that is in the process of booting, and interestingly that flashing is quite common. It was exactly the same on the other hubs as well that I had. So if Newer or anyone is watching who would like to send me another couple of panel lights, I would appreciate it. Not that I expect anyone to, but the request is there because this is going to become more and more of a need. Anyway, moving on. The hub, as I said, is booting. Dial radius is sat there in the background. We might as well try and connect to the Cisco via its SSH setup. I haven't tested it. I didn't bother to plug the cable back in either. So let's see. That's a good sign. Let's move you back over here. That. Perfect. Now there is a command on these that you can actually show all the session information. I've never used it before because we've never used a Cisco in this way before, but I believe it's show PPP all. Yes, right. Okay, so the hub is on its way up. It looks like it's about to start for, or looking for authentication. You'll have to excuse me looking up, my screens are stacked on top of each other, so yeah, I'm looking about rather than that because I can't see the hub. Yeah, there's nothing more to say on that. Okay, well, PPP's come up, which is a good thing, so let's see if that's on here. Now that has changed because that's just come up, but it's not showing us any. Oh, okay. There's no idea. Less questions asked the better. And let's see if that's showing on here, which it is. Perfect. Excellent. Cool. That's really good. I'm happy with that. My assumption was that that was going to be as simple as I was hoping it was going to be based on what I read online. So yeah, that's cool that works. The complicated stuff now comes in the form of MLPPP, which I've not done before, so we need to configure the Cisco for that. I need to do a bit of research into what we need to put on here from a server point of view, and then what I am going to do is, because I have done this in the past, although again a very long time ago, is we'll set this up as an MLPPP client. So if anything's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong catastrophically because of course I'm doing both sides I had no real experience with, so we'll see how that goes. But if we get all of this working, it then means that the bonded server, we shouldn't run into any issues with that connecting in theory, but at least we know we've got a working platform with that. So I'm going to go and do a bit of research as to how and what we need to put in on this to get MLPPP configured for, as I said, the server point of view, and I shall come back when I know more. It is a few days later, and that always is the case with me because this has not gone simple, and not for the reasons of working out the config. Literally after I finished the construction work across the road, it got louder. I started using jackhammers, and then to top it all off, in the afternoon we had a power cut. Now the power cut seems to have done a number on dial radius, which I have now hopefully got sorted, but I spent most of my day stroke afternoon trying to work out why this wasn't working, and it's probably just easier if I show you. So the currently online section here, even when the hub came back up, that would not appear in the list. It came up in the last connection attempt, and if you cleared it, it came up as a total session from a previous user, but it would not appear in the currently online section. So I've actually had to play with FreeRadius and a database in the background to try and get that sorted. Hopefully through a combination of what I've done, because I'm not entirely sure what, other than restarting it and clearing all the values out of a database that has now started to populate, so I can only assume there was a corrupted value in there somewhere. That has taken me away massively from what I was supposed to be doing, which is incredibly frustrating because this is now going to be late. However, during all of this, it has given me the opportunity to actually work out what config, what config even we need from the Cisco point of view, and it should be relatively straightforward and simple. Now, I'm going to close all the stuff down for that hour a second. We need this open at some point. We also need to create a user on it. And also this is open because I was testing in my Windows XP machine to make sure we actually did have connectivity, and we did have connectivity, it just didn't show it in there. But anyway, enough of that now. In terms of the config, I think I've got everything down that we now need. And my OCD, I have gone through and I've put in place templates for all of this, so I can literally go through it and do it without me having to copy and paste and move stuff around and just get things right, rather than me doing it live and this video taking forever because it's already going to be a little bit longer than I planned. So in terms of the 1941 that we've currently got sat over in the corner, all we need to do is create a multi-link bundle, and that hopefully should be relatively straightforward. And that's just been basically doing some research through network lessons and also firewall.cx. We've been using a serial interface for reference, but they should follow the same concept. So all we're going to do is jump back here, and you can see me actually testing and messing around with all of this. Let me go back to here. We're going to create the interface first because we're also going to create, what are we going to create first? We need to create the group first, because otherwise the virtual, have I got this found the right way? Right, we need to create the template first, because otherwise it's going to moan that it's not there. So let's go and put the template in, or the interface. No, it's around the other way. That in and that in. Right, that should be it in terms of what we need for the Cisco server side to accept the inbound connections. Now, this shouldn't change anything. However, what I am going to do is restart the PPP session on the BT hub to make sure that still comes in and this hasn't caused an issue of anything. And then in terms of deploying this, we're going to do it in a couple of steps. Hopefully that comes up, we don't have any issues. We're then going to go on to building the Cisco, which is actually over there, which we're going to set up for MLPPP, get all this hopefully working together, and then moved on to the BondedCD in theory. What I might do first is just to make sure one of the ADSL lines comes up, to make sure that is working, and then we'll build the bonded side of that as well, so we're limiting the amount of issues that we might run into as we're doing all of this, because we're building everything from scratch. We don't know if one end is working or the other end, so it makes sense just to make sure everything is working as it should be before we keep going and then get further down the line and realize there's a problem right at the beginning. So that is in. I'm going to go and restart the hub. Let's go and swap that over to that, which should give me that. Bear with me one moment. Okay, so the hub is coming back into sync, and this gives me the opportunity. I know I should have just typed in there. This gives me the opportunity to make sure that session's cleared. Also going to make sure that that cleared off of here, and then we will see if my fix actually works for this as well. I'm hoping it does. It doesn't seem to cause an issue it not being there, but I'd like it to be there. Worst case scenario is I have to fix it later. Has the hub come back up? Hub's got PPP session. That hasn't shown up on here. That's interesting. What have we broken? That shouldn't have affected anything. We should have just been able to add that in. No amount of me. Has that actually even got a session that's come up? No, it hasn't got a session that's come up. It looked like it had. I would have expected a session to have come up by now, to be completely honest with you. Why are you taking so long? Okay, there we go. I don't know why that took so long. The session's there. Session's there. Okay. I don't know why that took so long. That's the longest it's ever taken. Anyway, right, okay, that proves that the config that we've added for the MLPPP virtual interface hasn't caused any issues with just normal connections coming in. So let's move on to the Cisco, and I'm going to go and jump onto the desk so we can actually set up the Cisco, put the cards in it, and you can see what I'm doing, and then we'll go and drop the config in on that, which I have already got set up. Right, excuse the desk, it's a bit of a mess. As I always say, space is limited. Right, so the 1841, we're literally just going to pop in the WIC cards into slot 0 and slot 1. We should hopefully, if this all works, get a relatively good bond. However, people did report different experiences with MLPPP and ADSL back in the days, potentially due to limitations on BT side and in the exchange. Almost everyone seemed to have a varying sort of result at the end of the day. Hopefully we won't get that in this, because obviously we've got full control over everything, but it'll be interesting to see exactly what it's like, to see if it's similar to what we experienced back in the day as well. Because bonding, it was a lot easier on the, I hate this as well, if you accidentally push it you have to pop the card back out and then put it back in again. Yeah, bonding back in the day on fixed profiles was a lot easier than having rate adaptive, because you'd always bond based on the lowest sync speed, which makes sense, but ultimately if you had 4 lines connected at, or 1 line connected at 5 meg and the other line connected at 8, you'd only get 2 times 5 minus the IP overhead, so you wouldn't, you know, see the benefit of all of the connected speed. My OCD requires me to put the lines in the correct port, so port 1 is going into slot 0 because that is effectively card 1, and then port 2 is going into slot 1, which will be card 2, not from an iOS point of view but from my brain point of view. FE00 is going to go into the ESXi host. We need power, and that's falling on the floor. So power, and we need the console cable, which is also just falling on the floor. And I really do need to replace the plug on this. Yeah, I need to sort that out before we do anything, because on here it's going to keep popping out. Right, that is pretty much everything. So we're going to log in, we're going to configure slot 1, it's just standard ADSL, make sure this comes up and online. We're also going to set up DHCP and NAT for all of this as well, and we'll test that for the Windows XP machine, and then we'll jump onto bonding, hopefully both of these, get a good result, and then, if we've got time, move on to the BondedCD. Right, that is in the process of coming up. Just to run over quickly what we've already got in place, or what we're going to be putting in on this. It's pretty much what we've already seen on the BNG in terms of setup. The only real differences to this is that obviously everything is fast Ethernet on this rather than gigabit Ethernet, because it's only 10100. We're setting up the LAN IP address, we're also setting up NAT. We've got the ATM interfaces on this one. Obviously there is the other one in there, but as I've written this config out, it's literally the config that I'm putting in. In the config there will be ATM 0/1/0 for the other interface, but we're not doing anything with that yet. We've got 038 for our VPI VCI. We're setting our encapsulation, which is VCMux. It's going to be PPPoA. It's part of a dialer pool member. We've then got the dialer interface itself. We've got all the details set up in that as well. I've gone ahead and set up bonded at the uplinkport.co.uk, which reminds me I need to put that in radius, otherwise it's not going to work. We've got our DHCP pool, which is our range and DNS server, and also default route for the gateway. And then we have our NAT rule to use the dialer interface. And then we've got the default route itself. There's nothing too complicated on this, and that again should hopefully just go and connect and work. So what we'll do is, before I forget, let's go into here and create a user. Management, add user. We're going to do, where is it? Bonded at the uplinkport.co.uk. Password is going to be 1234. Attributes, vendor. Again, you've seen all of this before, so you don't really need to see me doing it now. But 192.168.30.10. Yeah, it'll be fine. Apply. And also from a bonding point of view, we shouldn't need to do anything else. All that's taken care for by MLPPP that's been configured either side. There might be an attribute we need to add. I'll double check if it doesn't work, but that is in place for that. And now we're going to jump back to here, and we are literally going to configure everything on here. And hopefully this should just drop in and work as usual. Again, I probably should have hit no on that a little earlier in this. I wasn't thinking. Sometime today. Thank you. I was wondering whether the console cable had fallen out again, because I still haven't done anything with it. Right. All of that. Key. It's probably going to take slightly longer on this because it's an older device. And we're going to do everything down to here. I'm fairly confident that should go in without any issues. And then we're going to copy. Oh, we might as well just copy the rest of it down, to be honest. Again, there's not much of it. And that's gone in as it should have done, so let's put that in. I didn't. That hasn't brought up. I've missed that out, haven't I? Yes. Oh no. I don't know. I'll put that in. Anyway, let's see if this has come up. Hasn't yet. What have I missed? Everything is plugged in. Ah, yeah, no, I get the sneaking suspicion the ATM interface was down and I've just brought it up. So of course it's just coming into sync. I could debug the dialer. Yeah, that's now in sync. So, oh, the virtual interface has just come up as well. I wasn't watching. Cool, that is there. Cool, right, let's jump onto here. IP config. That's pulled everything off of the home, the BT hub that it was plugged into. Are you going to be a pain with renewing IP addresses? Probably. So I'm just going to be lazy. And just disable and re-enable you. I've never had a great lot of luck with IP renew before anyone says anything. Cool, let's pick up the Cisco. I might as well just do what we normally do. Cool. Right, okay, so that is working on PPPoA on a single interface. Now we get to do the bonding stuff and see how that goes. I'm going to go and get lunch, and I'm going to hopefully carry on with everything working and have the same positive output in a minute. So, we'll see you in a second. Lunch has been consumed and we're now back. I've restarted the Cisco as well while I've been doing that. We don't need the config from a single line, although we're going to end up putting some of it back in. There was bits that we needed to take out and add and edit, and to be honest it's just easier to lose the config and then start from scratch because I've got that built as well here. And I just need to make sure I've actually got the ATM interface to come up on both of these, which I hadn't on the previous one, which again just goes to show that I don't test any of this before I do it, but yes, that does look like it's all in place. We do need to make some changes. So what I was researching in order to do this, and to be honest I cannot remember, but the Cisco documentation that I was reading for this was referencing LLC for the encapsulation. So we're still using PPPoA, but I've got to change the DSLAM to LLC from VCMux. You might be able to do it for VCMux. I honestly can't remember, and at the end of the day this is just a proof of concept to make sure it's working before we dive into the bonded CD, because at the end of the day I don't even know what bonded CD uses. It's probably VCMux, it could be LLC, again I can't remember, so we have to work that out anyway. So this is literally just a proof of concept to see if it's going to work. Let's jump over to the screen. That has come back up. That's going to take a while to do that, so let's go and grab all this. Again, everything in here is the same, and I've already got everything pre-laid out as to what I'm going to be using. The only real difference with this is that we are now having a multi-link interface, and the multi-link bundle, and we've also got the virtual template, which is controlling or has all the username and passwords. Hello Cisco, I probably should turn the speakers down a little bit for that. And we've changed the ATM interfaces to use the virtual template, which is on here, and then that's part of the multi-link group. So in theory, this should just work. I haven't done this on a Cisco in such a long time, I honestly cannot remember. So the easiest thing to do is just dump the config on it and see if it's going to work. And I'm just rolling through where we need to get up to. Oh, there. So we're going to grab that. Dump back to here. Well, the first things I should do is turn off DNS for this. I don't actually know if I've got it in the config. Yes, I have. No IP domain lookup. I'm quite glad that I didn't try and take forever to do that. RSA key 4. And we're going to do everything up to the ATM interfaces. Again, I'm hoping this just drops it in. But we're going to do one at a time. Where did I leave off? Did I do the other ATM interface? No, I did up to Ethernet 0. I did do out the ATM interface. I copied more than I should have done. But anyway, that's why I wanted to double check. Everything does look like it's gone in as it should have done. And I probably, thinking about it, should have changed the DSLAM before. Right, let's make sure this goes in. Yep, right, it should be plain sailing for now. Right. And I'm going to be optimistic. No, I'm not going to jinx it. Right, that's all in. We need to change the DSLAM over to LLC. And that is under ports. Always get this wrong. ADSL. Load port 1. I've worked it out, that loads the table, and then you can load port 1 from the table. So we're going to modify you, and we're going to use LLC. And I can't remember what port 2's on, so I'm going to load that. That's already on LLC. Let's just jump back to port 1 and make sure that's saved, which it did. Okay, let's go over to here. Now I don't know how this is going to present itself from a radius point of view. I don't know if we're going to see 2 entries, 2 sessions. I have no idea. Let's just see if this is online here. They current? I haven't set the time on any of this, so again I don't know. What is the time? The virtual access interfaces are up. Let's see if they're on here. Well, it appears to be. There's a multi-link bond, virtual interface 3 and 4. I'm assuming that's correct. I don't know. I honestly don't. I do the only thing I do is test it, I guess. That was a bit unclimactic, really. Let's just see if this is even working. As we're still here, we might as well ping Google. Well, we're getting a response. I have no flashing lights on the 1841, so I have no idea if the traffic's going over both lines. I mean, I guess I could have a look at the statistics in here quickly. But again, I've got nothing to reference them against. They're both up at 2 meg, so 448, 8 meg down. Okay, so we've got 774. I would guess if it is bonding, we're going to have something roughly of similar value on the other interface. Nope. But again, then these are in bits, aren't they, or packets, so this could be incrementing even when I'm not doing anything. So let's run a speed test and see what happens, I guess. Right, let's go. I haven't got a Windows machine running, it can do this. I obviously have a Windows XP machine, but I'll be running speed tests on that. Don't know how long this is going to take to boot. Don't know if I'm going to be running Windows updates or anything like that. Yeah. I still don't know if this is working. I don't know if that's correct while this boots up. I've never seen the other side of an MLPPP link. That is obviously definitely correct because both of them are there. I don't know if this is just logged in twice or whether the bund or the virtual interface. I mean, I guess I could check. Show interface, and what was it? It was multilink 1. Well, multilink interface is up. Please don't do Windows updates. If this works, then it's just straight onto the BondedCD and see if we can get that fired up and working. The BondedCD really does need a video in itself, to be completely honest with you. There is so much history regarding upstream internet and how sort of all of that ended and also how it was started. There is a post, which I think I said earlier, on ISP review, and if I haven't put it up, I'll put it up again, as to how that sort of all imploded right at the end. The concept was fantastic. Upstream internet were a fantastic bunch of people to work with, especially Eddie back in the day. It's a shame that it ended as it did, my own personal views, but nonetheless, upstream internet were certainly made bonding an awful lot easier, and I'm hoping to see it again. Now, I cannot remember anything about the BondedCD in any way, shape or form. I need to find the user guide for it, which I think is still on archive.org, because I have seen it, I just haven't saved the file. But we will go over it if I have time, depending on how long this video is, because at the end of the day I want that working. Windows has just come up, so let's open up Chrome. In fact, I'll actually better just test that this actually has internet access. Which it does. Let's make sure it is via the Cisco. Which it is. Cool. Now I'm going to use a generic speed test on this, one that I don't have to go and blur a load of things out on. I think Virgin Media do one that is non-descriptive. We don't do that. Virgin Media speed test. I have no idea what other command prompt windows were. Right, in theory, if this is bonding, we should see above 7.5 meg on the downstream, and we should, as they're connected at 448 on the up, we should see above sort of 0.4 meg on the upstream. Anything more than that, I would consider this a win and it's bonding. So let's see. Why did I scroll? I don't really know what to say. Ah, yes, we've got, wow, that is more than 8816. That's actually about right. With the downstream bonding, so the multilinks there, well, oh wow, the upstream is there as well. That's higher than, okay, it's all over the place. I'm guessing it's going to settle down around there. Yes. That is an absolute win. That is fantastic. 2 unbonded back in the day was probably where the sweet spot was. Anything more than that, most people had varying different degrees of sort of success and experience with it. So that is really, really good. And I think a lot of the issue that people had was potentially the way that it was all backhauled over the ATM network. But fortunately, I'm not having to deal with an ATM network in the background. Cool, that is really good. Let me jump back to here. I suppose the next thing for us to do is try the bonded server, but I'm skeptical as to whether that's even going to turn on given the state of the board. Let's go move to the desk and see what happens and see where we go. We have a new camera view, and I wish the first one of me doing this was actually to give you better news. Unfortunately, I have made a big cock up, and it's probably easier if I show you it rather than me trying to explain. So everything down here, I was in the process of plugging all of this in to start having a look at it, and stupidly I didn't check to see if the power supply was off. So when I plugged the power cable in, the system turned on for a split second, had the smell of very unhappy electronics, and I got a sense of smoke coming out from this particular direction. So it is all on me. I should have taken these cards out before I did anything. I just completely forgot. I was just in the mode of let's get this up and see what it's going to do. And I'm especially annoyed given the fact at the start of the video I said how bad this particular board was in. So I'm hoping it hasn't destroyed anything like the Sangoma cards, because that's where they're sitting as well. The only other thing here is the graphics card. The graphics card, not that you can see. In fact, if I take this off, they are all up, then you might be able to see it a bit better. But the graphics card is in quite a state. If I take that out, it's got tag release. This card is horrible. And again, I should have taken this out from the beginning. I should have taken all of this out from the beginning. In fact, I should have actually just done a test on the board to see if there was any shorts on it. But I was excited, and I'm not one for hiding my mistakes. I'd rather be honest and say what's happened, and this has happened. Now, the only saving grace is we have the CD, the memory stick I still need to sort out for files and see if there's any on that. But I'm hoping this thing, if the Sangoma cards are good, then we should be able to work something out, assuming we can find a replacement board for all of this. So I'm going to go and find out what let the magic smoke out, and I'll come back to you in a moment. Right, I am back, and the Sangoma cards look, apart from being potentially really bad, I have no idea how it's going to come out on this particular camera, because it's not a wonderful resolution camera. It's more just for overhead stuff, but the Sangoma cards themselves look absolutely fine. I don't see anything wrong with them. The issue is actually the graphics card, thankfully, or at least it appears that way at the minute. There is a tiny little MOSFET on the board there that has a hole in it, and I will throw up some close-up shots of that right now so you can see it. But I'm hoping this was the only casualty, and again I'll take some close-up pictures of this, but yeah, given the state of this, I'm not surprised. I'm just annoyed with myself that I didn't check. Hopefully they're fine. The board itself was toast anyway by the looks of things. I'll pull this out and take some close-up images of it. It does, I need to work out what we're going to do going forward, because as I said there was a compatibility list. This board does have a PCI Express port for the graphics card. I need to see if I've got anything that's even remotely similar to this, or whether I can still get this board on eBay or something. I don't know. Right, lesson learned. I have thought long and hard with myself about continuing this video. However, as we're almost an hour into this already, I'm really skeptical about continuing it. And the reasons being is, at the beginning of the video I said this needed its own video, and it does. Arguably I've gone way overkill on everything that we were building before we got to this point. However, as I said at the beginning of the video, the chances of this booting, given its current state, it was quite minimal. So I have kind of come to the same conclusion that I had initially been thinking during the video. I just hadn't quite expected to get here by way of blowing something up, which, I mean, given the state of it, it was never going to work anyway. But I have got options. So these are the boards that I have bought down, and I could spend some time trying it on these to see if it does work. However, I could easily spend another half an hour in edited video time messing around testing stuff, and as I said, this needs its own video, so I'd rather do a bigger video on all of this and actually going through it, because while this is only bonding, the BondedCD it's got memories for me, and I'd like to share those. So the boards I've got here, I've got an MSI MS7094, that's from around 2005, and then we have a Gigabyte GA7N400, which is around from 2004. The issue I've got is the board that's currently in there, which I can't see what model it is. Oh, it's an MS7514, is from around 2008. So these boards are actually older than the one that's currently in there. Now, as I said, there was a compatibility list with those boards. I cannot for the life of me remember any of the board numbers, models, and it's not on archive.org. So while I was actually researching the age of the board that's in there, I came across one that had literally just been listed on eBay, which I'll throw up here, which I have bought. Apparently it's working. The BondedCD obviously works with it because that's the board that's in here, so I've ordered that, so it should be a straight swap in and out, and fingers crossed that works. Hopefully the Sangoma cards still work, and we can kick off the next video literally running, so hopefully get all that in and powered up. I've also had some other good news. The USB stick, I did try the recovery on it. There is nothing on that disk. If you run it through Disk Doctor, it comes up and it finds some of the files, but a lot of them are corrupted, and I'll throw a picture up somewhere of one of those here. But Ellis Way, who is in our community Discord, as I said earlier on in the video, he's an Aladdin's cave of software. Has the files for this. He used to work for a UK ISP or someone that had the BondedCD, and he has the files on his drive, so he's kindly sent those across to me. So we have the base files for this to be able to work. CD is sat there, and I've made a copy of that as well, so providing everything else works, and if it don't, I do have spare components for a lot of this as well, so hopefully we should be able to get this up and running in the next video, and I'm really excited to do that. So get subscribed, because there is going to be a follow-up for this, and it probably will be the next video, in all honesty. There is someone now that's cutting the grass outside, so I'm going to keep this short. Discord is now open to anyone who wants to join. There may at some point in the future be different Patreon tiers in terms of getting access to different channels and different resources, and even jumping on some of our live calls, and that's only in response to a number of you asking how you can support me. At the minute, I don't feel comfortable offering any sort of like paid memberships of any value to give behind the scenes or anything like that. The reason being is I'm so busy anyway. Doing all of this takes up an awful lot of my time, and I don't want to sort of overpromise and under-deliver. So I'd much rather give that type of value in having access to something that you can generally get some value out of, like additional bits in sort of Discord, rather than me offering anything like behind the scenes stuff at the second. So just bear that in mind. T-shirts and merchandise, while we're on the subject of supporting me, again, I've had a number of people reach out and say, can they buy t-shirts? And the answer is yes, you will be able to soon. It's something I've been looking into, but however, having these printed, which I had done in the UK, they weren't particularly expensive, but what it has highlighted is, because of the logo, it's quite thin in places, a printed sort of image like this on a stretchy material, over time it's starting to pull it apart. So we're trying to work out the best way to resolve that without having to have them sewn or anything like that. That's going to only increase the cost of them. When they're done, they will be available via Teesprings, I think it is, who will ship obviously everywhere and deal with all of that, so I don't have to. So that is coming, so it's just going to be a case of bearing with me while I sort out that, because anything I do send out I actually want to be of good quality. But until then, the biggest thing you can do to support me is just subscribe and like the videos. It's as simple as that. The more the channel grows, the more impact it's hopefully going to have, the more sponsors I can get on board, and the more we can do with bits like this. So, and speaking of sponsors, as always, I have to give a massive shout out to Zen. If it wasn't for Zen, I wouldn't have the DSLAM or the MSAN, and none of this would be possible. So I owe them a great deal. If you are in the UK and you're looking for broadband, go and give Zen a look in, because they are an amazing company. The link is in the video description. And I think that is everything from me. I think I've covered everything. I mean, I didn't intend to blow that up, but let's be honest, it was probably going to die anyway at some point. So, but it means I can give it the video in dedication and attention that it actually deserves, in my view. So, and I can also do a bit more research and get some bits up on upstream internet as well, and potentially even reach out to Richard Ballard, who was there at the end as well. So I have got his contact details through some other bits that he's done since. So maybe an interesting video to reach out to him as well and see if he can share some of his memories. But right, anyway, that is it from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you soon.